This is the end of an era. One of the loudest, most fun engines of the past decade is going away. We're talking about the supercharged V8 that found a home in lots of Jags and many Land Rovers and Range Rovers. Well, the fancy British SUVs have already ditched the supercharged V8, and these are the last two examples.
It's true, and while we will have the F-Pace around for a few more years, just
1 to 20 maybe?
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah,
maybe. But we're actually going to be saying goodbye to the entire F-Type at the end of this year as well, just the whole car.
So we thought we'd take one last drive, say farewell, and see what we're gonna miss, or maybe not miss.
And see what the heck Jag is gonna do after this.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Despite that the F-Pace has been on sale for quite some time now, it still looks pretty modern and relevant thanks to changes along its lifespan, and more importantly, it still looks good. There are few SUVs in this class that look as good as the F-Pace, especially in SVR trim. I love the quad exhaust and how it's slightly inset on the rear bumper. The taillights, the headlights, they've just aged well, and I don't think they'll ever go out of style. Inside, it's a pretty similar story. It's showing its age in some sections, but in other areas, it still feels modern, and again, this is because Jag has been doing constant updates to the vehicle. With the full SVR trim, I'm always a fan of vehicles that have a bit of color. This one has a lot of color. The black and red looks great. A lot of it's leather wrapped in the doors and on the dash and on the door tops. And then there's a cool sort of silver accent that runs along, and it has a nice metal pattern on the dash, and then in the doors it works into the actual Meridian speakers. Again, it just adds a little bit of interest to the interior, and with the rest of the vehicle the way it is, it totally matches its personality. This isn't just your average F-Pace, and I think a lot of that is in the seats. The front seats are definitely sport seats. They may not look overly comfortable, and they may look more supportive for aggressive driving, and they definitely are for that, and they have adjustable side bolsters. But I spent 4 hours straight in this vehicle in back-to-back days, and I didn't have any complaints for comfort. Maybe my body type just fits perfectly well. There's not a lot of cushion front and rear, but it's just like it's molded my body into it, and it's been great. Places where it's showing a bit of the age is the switchgear, but it's got a modern big new infotainment system and a fully digital instrument cluster, and it's got touch buttons for the climate control, and it's got the usual Jaguar Land Rover setup where you can push the driver or passenger dial in to get to the seat for heated seats and ventilated seats, or you can pull it out for fan speed, or in the middle it adjusts the temperature. I really like this setup because it's still using a touchscreen of sorts like everyone else is obsessed with, but there's also a physical dial, and it's burying 3 different functions into one dial, which I like, and then the touch buttons for the rest of the climate around it are pretty well spaced out and easy to use. So obviously the center of the SVR is that supercharged 5-liter V8 that's going away, and what this means for the future of SVR or even the F-Pace as a whole is kind of unknown. Jag has stated that they are going to go all electric in the future, but a lot of automakers have been kind of rolling that back, so we'll have to wait and see. I don't think there'll be another generation of the F-Pace the way it is, which is too bad, because if it borrowed the same BMW sourced turbocharged V8 that Land Rover and Range Rover are, it could make for quite an interesting vehicle. But I could also see BMW not wanting it in this vehicle because that competes head-to-head with the X5. But back to the V8 supercharged engine. Since the first time I ever encountered this engine, which was well over a decade ago, I've been sold. They let it be a loud, brash, powerful, noisy V8 from day one, and they never apologized for it, and they just let it keep being like that, even as things got quieter or more subtle or even electric. When it first came out, few vehicles, especially SUVs, allowed drivers to make so much glorious noise. Today it's a little more commonplace, and I don't know if this is the best sounding V8 anymore in an SUV. I don't think it is. It sounds almost over the top, just V8 screaming. But the one thing no one's really replicated is the pops and cracks when you're downshifting or getting off throttle. They're not necessary, and they're being purposely made by the engine computer, but it's just so much fun to have. Just such a throwback, old school feel in this. It's like a classy, sophisticated British SUV that has just a wild side hiding under the hood. I'm sure Jaguar is going to make a more powerful, quicker EV SUV one day, but it just won't have the personality this vehicle had. So yeah, I've been in plenty of modern vehicles that could outrun this thing to 60, even to 100. But again, it's the whole experience. It's sort of like a Miata. Is it the quickest vehicle out there? No. Can most vehicles replicate the feeling behind the wheel? No. And that's sort of like this. Sure, an iX or EQE, AMG are going to slaughter it 0 to 60, but I'll be making more noise, probably having more fun. The SVR has never been just about the engine. It's the entire vehicle's package. Special mention needs to go to the transmission. This 8-speed I've praised in many applications before, and here it's no different. The upshifts are almost dual clutch quick, and the downshifts are pretty crisp too, especially when you have everything set to the dynamic mode. And the entire chassis is obviously set up for on-road performance rather than off-roading. And again, despite the age of this vehicle, it's still a nice combination of agility, responsiveness, yet comfort. Click it up to the dynamic mode and things stiffen up, but so does response. The steering feels good. It's not the best, but it's good. And the chassis really does remain flat when hustling it around. It's just one of those vehicles that's really easy to start driving semi-hard right from the start. It doesn't feel ponderous, and it doesn't feel wildly uncontrollable. It's just a vehicle you can kind of point and shoot and hit the accelerator and off you go. And when you need to stop, you just step on the brake and it just stops. It's just drama-free, except for all that noise, which is just, as I've said about 100 times in this video, amazing. So yeah, we'll miss you, F-Pace. It's one of those things you don't realize what you have until it's gone, and I think consumers, and even myself included, kind of forgot about the F-Pace SVR over the last few years with other things grabbing the headlines, and now that it's going away, suddenly it's forefront in my mind, and I'm going to miss it.
Now, on paper, these are pretty similar vehicles, right? I mean, same engine, although this has a little bit more horsepower, same torque, both are all-wheel drive, and even the same transmission, although this does have a longer final drive ratio. But you know what? The AJ V8 is such a gloriously hedonist engine that I feel it's only appropriate to experience it in the most hedonistic possible body style, a two-seat roadster. Even though Jag has spent a decade toning it down, this is still a barely contained animal of an engine that's barking and howling and farting its way across the land. It's so effortlessly muscular too that you just can't help but throw in a downshift here or a blip there. It's so much fun. Now, of course, I can put it in dynamic mode or turn on the loud button here, and I can just listen to the F-Type slowly pierce the time-space continuum every time the revs clear 3 grand. It really sounds like a giant is just tearing apart entire. It's a testament to the inherent rightness of the ZF Autobox that even today, it matches up pretty well with what you can get elsewhere in the class. Okay, it's a little jerky when I'm manually downshifting, but otherwise, it's still a peach. If I leave it to its own devices, the gearbox never sets a gear wrong. The steering is also pretty good. It's not as feelsome as a Porsche or as quick and direct as a BMW, but the big steering wheel does have a good amount of weight, and you can lean on it enough to get a general idea of what those front tires are doing. The cabin is pretty spacious, and it's trimmed about as well as you'd expect. The leather looks, feels, and smells great, and I think these seats cut me just right. They could be a little more bolstered, but that would make this a more aggressive track kind of car, and that's not what the F-Type is about. The F-Type is about looking cool and sounding like the N-Types. On that note, I'll just say it, the convertible is actually the correct choice. I'm sure the coupe is slightly sharper, but I mean, this looks exceptional. And also, the top goes up and down pretty quickly, even at low speeds. Now, this isn't going to be one of those rose-tinted, only positive sort of eulogies. The F-Type is fun and full of character, but it has flaws. Chief amongst them is the ride. It manages to be, well, good enough when you're out on smooth tarmac like this, but if you experience any sort of bumpy or uneven surfaces, the F-Type manages to be both brittle and bouncy. Dynamic mode is an exercise in tolerance, and there's only so long you can really survive before you're just kind of annoyed at being knocked out of your seat over and over again. It's not entirely unexpected. I mean, the F-Type is carrying 3,900 pounds these days, and you're also basically sitting on the rear axle. What else don't I like about the F-Type? Well, it never got the Pivi Pro infotainment system, so it's working with the older Jag system that manages to be both slow and not pretty. But on the plus side, at least with the convertible, the glare is so bad that you rarely see the screen. Oh, wait. Yeah, it's not good, and of course you actually still need a wire to have any phone mirroring too, and you're going to need that to charge your phone for that matter. I also don't know why this is, maybe it's just me and the height that I am, but I keep getting squeaks from the seatbelt retainer just on the seat here. Well, let's see, what else do I not like about the F-Type? Well, I don't like the paddle shifters. They just feel like glorified buttons. They're not particularly satisfying to use. The vent rising up is a cool bit of theater, but it just seems like one other thing that could break down the road. I think overall, though, it's just that the Jag is so full of character. It is a vehicle that is dominated by this engine, and that just means that I don't really know if it has a future anyway without this engine. It's so central to the experience that an electric Jag, I don't know if it could really translate.
So there does seem to be some life left in the F-Pace, even when the engine goes away. And I mean, I'd love for that certain 4.4 liter turbo V8 to make its way into this vehicle. That'd be awesome. But I think there's a certain German manufacturer that wouldn't want a direct competitor with that engine. So
That's odd.
So what about this thing? I mean, when this first came out, it was like unbelievable, but that was well over a decade ago.
It's true, and I don't like saying this because I do really enjoy driving the F-Type. It's fun, it's all emotion. But that move to V8s only a few years ago kind of makes this not worth keeping around in my mind.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. Without the V8, I don't think the F-Type would really have a unique selling feature anymore in the market in 2025. And so I think it's time for it to go away. And if Jag wants to reinvent itself as this EV brand, it'll have to do it with a very different car than this.
Yeah, I fully agree with what you're saying. When it came out, it was so cool looking. So it had the V8, the V6 with the manual option, even a 4-cylinder turbo.
Mm-hmm.
But then as the years went on, it was more about the experience of that V8 in the car. It was never the quickest or the best handling or anything, but it gave you that full sensory experience. To your point, that killed the other engines.
So I think what you're saying, Mike, is that it's just a bittersweet farewell for this engine. In the F-Type, it's kind of lived out its purpose, but in the F-Pace, the car still feels modern enough that it can survive for a little bit longer even without the V8.
Yeah, but it won't be as cool.
No, it won't.
As we've said before, this is the only V8 all-wheel drive convertible on the market that I can think of. Yeah.
The M8 convertible.
E-Ray,
Yeah.
technically.
Yeah, technically. Yeah.
All right. Well, those are both better than this, so.
Aw.